Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, it's time for another anime movie review. This time it is the latest entry in the One Piece film series. It's the 15th feature film, which that's quite a lot, but considering this series has been going on 20 years, you can kind of see why. It, of course, is One Piece Red. Now, I don't think I've really talked about One Piece a lot on this channel, but we'll get into that in a bit. Just a reminder, if you want to support the channel, both the Patreon and PayPal links are down below. If you want to support the channel and gain access to videos early and suggest topics for future videos, go the Patreon route. If you just want to do one-off support or one-off requests, go the PayPal route. Either way, your support is appreciated. One Piece. This is one of those anime and manga that I was really introduced to once I was introduced to the concept of manga. Because there was a time where I knew about anime, but I did not know that the whole distinction between, well, mainly it's a Western distinction, between the anime style and the cartoon style. Like, I knew stuff like Pokemon and all that was made in Japan, but I didn't know it was its own distinct style. And I did not know some of this animation from that style was based on a comic called manga. It was until they did the American version of Shonen Jump. And with that, I was introduced to a lot of stuff. I was introduced to Sandland, the Dragon Ball manga, Naruto, Death Note eventually. And that was also my introduction to JoJo's Bizarre Adventures and actually reading it. And if I ever get around to reviewing that, I am going to mention the first moment that I saw of JoJo and my initial reaction to it, if I can remember how to describe it. And of course, the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, which I got to bring up my camera thing on my computer real quick. Which, as you can see from my manga thing up there, you can kind of see Yu-Gi-Oh. It's where my finger is. That's my Yu-Gi-Oh manga. Now, One Piece is also one of the ones that was introduced to me. Now, if you want to know the first moment of One Piece I was introduced to in the manga, it was after Luffy punched a certain snot-nosed son. Yeah. And then I would read it off and on. So there's a handful of arcs in the first part before the time skip I am familiar with. But eventually, after reading it with the post-time skip, I kind of fell off reading it for a handful of years. And I only got back on it within the last couple of months just to read a little bit of it. And I'm just keeping caught up with it. I'm just not reading it because it's one of those things that I want to try to get through the rest of the series watching and then read up to it. Which, of course, is an arduous task considering we're now at 1,000 plus episodes. But in the words of a sitcom character, challenge accepted. And if you're wondering where my One Piece collection up there is, it's that stuff right there. There's a lot of volumes I still need to get, but I don't think I have enough room to get all of them. Collect all of the One Piece volumes. Now, of the anime I do watch, there's only a handful of them I've actually watched the movies of. Dragon Ball goes without saying, because they used to show them all the time on Toonami when I was watching Dragon Ball. But that's the Z portion, not the original part. Naruto, it's mainly the non-Shippuden ones. And then every other anime, I don't think I've really watched any of the movies, at least I can think of. I know there's some I need to watch. One Piece, I do have the Alabasta retelling movie, I just never watched it. Even though a lot of the movies are on Netflix right now, I gotta go back and watch them. Probably once I'm done watching the current arc of the anime I'm watching. Now, being a regular con goer, and this being the first anime expo since pre-COVID, so the first one in 3 years, walking around and all that. When I saw the marketing for this and just hearing what it's about, I'm like, Shanks has a daughter? She's a singer? If this film actually gets a release stateside, I will go watch it. Because that's one thing I'm glad has actually been changing in the last couple of years, is that when they release an anime film, they'll release it here. Now, I think a lot of this has to do with how much hype it has. Like, the Dragon Ball ones have all had hype, the last couple ones. But the first 3 of the new Dragon Ball movies had, limited releases. Like, I've talked about it ad nauseum in other videos. But me and my ex, when we saw Battle of Gods together, like a one-off showing, completely sold out. Fun experience, though. I didn't see Resurrection F before. When I hear it's the same type of thing, like limited dates thing. Then with Broly, same type of thing, and I wasn't able to see it due to that. And then when they released the redubs of the Sailor Moon movies and all that other stuff, same thing. Those ones I kind of get though, since those are re-releases years later. But then with the last Dragon Ball Super movie, Super Hero, it looked like it was going to start as limited ones, but then got, same thing here. It looked like it was going to be limited, and then a lot. Here's how much love it got theater-wise, which I love. The little theater nearby, where I have a lot of personal memories at, where I haven't gone to in a while, that I saw films like Waterworld. I saw a bunch of the Harry Potter films there. The last movie I saw, My Abuela, I saw there. That one had showings of One Piece Red. And that one rarely, if ever, gets films like this. Think about this. When that was a Regal Cinema, they didn't get the Digimon movie. Rest my case there. Now, going back to my point, seeing all this stuff, like, I gotta go see this. I just gotta see when the timing is and when they're gonna announce dates and all that. You know, it's gonna be a couple months after the Japanese showing, because it says 8.6 here on the poster I'm looking at. When it came out, me and my friend, we saw it, and it was fun. Now, we waited about a week to go see it, because a lot of the stuff usually releases on a Thursday, and that's my Monday. And by the way, it's a Thursday as I'm recording this. And it's one of those things like either I get a showing right before work and then rush to work, depending on what time I get out of the theater, or I wait for a day off. It's the one thing that sucks about working swing shift. Is that you can do other stuff before work, but when it's stuff like this to where they don't actually start doing it until right before you're going to go into work, you got to either EO, which I'm not going to do unless it's an emergency, or you got to wait for your days off. And that's usually what I do. Now, going in, me and my friend heard a couple things about it. Like, some people didn't like the film because of lack of fights. Some people didn't like the musical numbers, which that one I get. I mean, the fight one, even at one point in the movie, I'm listening to my friend, lack of fights? But, because I don't know where that criticism's coming unless it's just someone talking out of their butt. Now, the plot of this film in a nutshell is that the world-famous singer Uta is performing, and this is the first time she's performing live in front of an audience. Before this, she's mainly performed, I don't know how accurate it'd be to use this phrase, but for lack of a better one, I'm going to put online, or the One Piece world's equivalent of online. So it's a big, big deal. Everyone's going. Even the Straw Hat Pirates are going, but they're going incognito. And the thing I love about it is that they're all dressed up rock style. I mean, you got Usopp dressed up like Gene Simmons or Gene Simmons Light. You gotta love that. And I love how they threw some dialogue like that into it. That's definitely a dubism, but it's a fun dubism. Now, Luffy is quiet a lot through a lot of it, so you wonder what he's thinking. But after Uda's first song, we see what it is that he knew who she was, Shanks' daughter, which is something she's been keeping quiet. And in case you're wondering, that is one of the big selling points for the film, other than some of the other stuff. Is like, And I find myself channeling my inner William Shatner there. When did Shanks have time for a family? Which, there might be one point at the end I might spoil, but we'll go. Now, it's obvious when these two met, if he knows she's Shanks' daughter, and that was when they were kids. And we do get some flashback scenes showing them interact. Now, obviously, they take place before the time Shanks stopped by, which led to Luffy gaining his Devil Fruit powers and Shanks losing his arm. Uda is a little distraught that now her secret's known to everybody, but she lets it slide. Now, the concert goes on, and right away you can tell there's something weird going on. Like, is this all the result of her Devil Fruit power, or is there something more going on? It's a little bit of both, actually. Now, everything seems fine until Luffy refuses to give up his dream of being a pirate, and that's when Uda, for the plot of the movie, shows her true colors, and we find out she's the antagonist. Now, this is one of the things I was wondering about, because I kept hearing rumors from people who saw the Japanese version of the film. It was on subreddits and all that, talking about her being a little antagonistic. But I'm like, I wonder if that means she's going to be the bad guy, or if something happens and she shows that her doing the concert is not for all it seems. Which turns out is a bit of both. Because she is the bad guy, which From what I've read, that means she's the first female antagonist in one of the One Piece movies, the main antagonist. And she does have ulterior motives. Part of it is tied into her devil fruit. I'm not going to spoil it all for those who haven't seen the movie yet, even though it's been released how long? It only says the Japanese date on the side of the Wikipedia, sorry. But it's just one of those things, I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't seen it yet. But let's just say it does tie into a devil fruit. That's all I'm going to say about it. And it also ties back to the whole thing with the world government, her wanting to make a new era, which goes in with her dialogue. World government not being too keen on it and them trying to stop it. Luffy and them trying to get out of it. And they're trying to go around everything, get away from Uda, and try to undo everything that's going on that involves her fruit, the Uta Uta fruit, which means the Sing Sing fruit. Or Song Song fruit, however you want to translate it. I think Sing Sing is the way that I read it. No, it does not involve prisons, even though, well, I guess you could say with how the film goes, it kind of does. But not the type of prison you think of when you hear the phrase Sing Sing. Now, just jumping into this film as the first One Piece film I watch all the way, you would think I'd be a little bit lost considering all the lore that's happened since I started watching, but I've caught up loosely enough about stuff now that I kind of understand it. Like the whole hockey thing, I kind of get it. So whenever they brought up observation hockey and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, I get it. You know, seeing the characters, how they've grown up and all that, and some of the other characters, like the Big Mom Pirates. I understand enough about it to where I can go. And then, of course, the Admirals. I remember them from the death of a certain fave character that I remember reading in the manga. That seeing them is like, yeah. So I was caught up enough about it. Now, having watched the dub, the one thing that I was going to wonder how it would hold up would be hearing the dub voices of characters that I have not seen in my rewatch yet. I mean, people like Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, all the main original ones. I kind of already know how they sound like. It's like Chopper that I would be wondering, even though I already kind of heard his voice from the little preview things that they would show on TikTok and all that. Frankie, I was wondering, but then I say, oh, it's Patrick Seitz, so kind of understand what he's going to sound like. Brook, I was wondering, and it's not how I'd expect he would sound in the dub, but oddly enough, it fits him. Jinbei, I was wondering. And of course, Robin, I was definitely wondering how she's going to sound here, because I've heard her in the dub before, but that was in the 4Kids dub, which I don't even remember how many of the voices sound in that one. The main thing that comes to mind when I think of that dub is the opening theme. That's the only thing I can actually literally hear in my head when I think about it. I don't know if you say a lot of people 4Kids One Piece, that's probably what pops to their head. Now, the musical numbers in this movie are pretty good. I like all of them. In fact, to the point where on my phone, I actually have it on my Spotify, and a lot of them are in the workout rotation now. Now, her dub voice is Amanda Lee, or if you want to go by her professional name, Amalie, or Monarch if you go by her VTuber name. I've already listened to her. I did not know she did dub voice work until this. In the movie proper, she does not dub the singing. Ado, who did the singing in the Japanese version, her song is still in there. And I gotta say, Ado has a good singing voice. But it's one of those things that I wondered, because a lot of the advertisements, you could hear the songs in English. Now, I know there's a lot of weird thing when it comes to the Japanese music being dubbed by Funimation or just dubbed in general. Now, I know they could still do it to a point because Dragon Ball Super, when shown on Toonami, it would have the opening and closing done, so maybe for that they can still do it. But maybe like inside the film proper or whatnot, they can't. Or maybe it's just easier just to keep that intact. But I know for One Piece they did before, because of the part in the show I'm watching right now, they're actually dubbing it. But I know later on they quit it. I don't know if they just found it was easier just to keep the original song intact and not worry about having to change it. Which I kind of understand, because there is a differences in English and Japanese with the phrasing and all that. And having Took singing. I know one thing when you switch a song from one language to another that you got to worry about is the difference between poetic and literal translation. And if you, those of you who don't know what that means, literal, just how it sounds. You take the original song and you translate it literally. Now, I think you can already see the danger of that, is that what might work in a phrasing in one language, once you translate it, especially if you're using it in the right context of the words, if it's a word that has different meanings depending on said context, you might get a super long phrase. I mean, even in languages that are related, you'll get that. Take German and English. Bat in English. In German, Fledermaus. See how many more different syllables? Saying it is one thing, but singing it, Fledermaus, bat. See? A little bit different. Fledermaus. Fledermaus. See, a little different. Now, poetic translation is you take the lyrics, I mean, you translate them first so you can get the proper context, and then you have to reword it to keep the original intent in the context of the song, but make it to where it's easier to sing in the language you're going with. And you can kind of see why it might be more trouble than it's worth to do that. But I also heard there might be some legal reasons involving the singers and all that, which it's a combination of both. I can see why Funimation decided not to do it. But it is a little bit of false advertisement to include that English version of the song in there. Now, Amelie did release a cover on her Spotify, so we get it there, so it's still good. Now, within the context of at least the English dub of the film, how does it work that she has the Amelie voice as her speaking voice and then Oda is her singing voice? Well, I mean, she had a different singing and speaking in the Japanese, but here you can go with that. The whole thing they're talking about with singing is that that's just the language she learned to sing in, and it adds a little bit of different quality to her voice. And of course, Otto, her voice, I really do love it. I mean, she's got that nice singing voice. But then when it does... Hold on, I gotta go to the song. I think it's Backlight is the one I'm thinking of specifically. Yeah, Backlight. She has a little bit of a raspy edge to her voice. It's not quite punk, but it kind of goes on that door where it's kind of like she's using a little bit of the lower part of her range, but she's also adding a little bit of a rasp to it. Which it sounds, some people might say that's not that hard. Depending on how you sing and your style and your technique, it could be a little bit easier, it could be harder. You just got to make sure you do it without it feeling forced. Because if there's one thing about singing, it's just like any other muscle, you don't want to force it. It's like, if it feels like you're going to force it, don't do it. You know, it's just like if you're lifting heavy. If you feel like you got to force it up, don't do it. Because if you hurt something... I mean, just ask James Hetfield and the singer from Trivium how fun it is to blow at your singing voice. It's not fun. I've never blown up my singing voice, but I have lost my voice for being sick. It was not fun. Other than maybe getting someone to laugh because I sound like Christian Bale's Batman. That's really the only fun thing that was about it. Now, animation is pretty good. Like a lot of the more recent anime films, it does work in some CGI thing. Here, there is a story reason for it involving Uda's fruit. That's all I'm going to say about it. Because, like I said, I don't want to spoil it. Shanks doesn't really appear a whole lot in the film. It's mainly the latter half. And we do get an answer to the question of how he had time for a family. Now, this is one element of it I don't mind spoiling because it does kind of tie into Shanks' little arc in the manga involving how he became a member of Roger's Pirates. And that is the fact that she's adopted. Because one thing I was wondering, I'm like, okay, she has red hair on one half like Shanks does. Does that mean the mother has white hair? They're going to do the whole Shoto thing there? Nope, she's adopted. Now, we don't know if she knows that, but I have a feeling she probably does. I mean, she calls her dad Shanks, but it's also out of respect. Now, with all that and everything, it shows that she really does love him as her father, even though she has a little tiff that's plot-inspired that I'm not going to go into here, but let's just say the way the film outlines it, you could definitely see why she would have a reason to hate her dad based on the information she has and when she finds out the truth. And the ending part, yeah. The fights, I think, are choreographed pretty good, especially for the plot-related reasons. One thing I kind of heard in passing, I'm like, okay, let's see if this happens, is that we get a brief appearance from Gear Luffy. That's right, Joy Boy Luffy is in this movie. Now, we only see him from a distance, and based on a few photos I've seen of him, it kind of looked a little different. So it had me wondering, okay, obviously the people that made the film, the creative team and the artists and all that, knew that Luffy was going to have that form before it debuted in the manga. But it's like, how far back did they do this? At least this film was announced in November 2021, which means that the film had to have at least been in early production, if not further along by that point. So they had to have known about that transformation at least then. So Oda probably let them know. Now, whether or not he actually had the design finalized or gave him a vague one and they decided to keep it vague so they didn't have to do some lore-related reason for why it looks different, a la a certain Dragon Ball Z movie. It's one of those weird little things, but at least we get a little appearance by it. And it's at a point in the film that definitely fits from a thematic standpoint, because it's involved in trying to save Uta by that point. I know that's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's one of those things of like, how do you get her from being the main antagonist to making her not the antagonist? They're trying to save her. Now, the ending of the film is a little abrupt, because once everything's been wrapped up, everything's back to normal. Luffy just finds himself back on his ship, with his ship going one way, Shanks' ship going the other way. They never get to have a proper conversation. He never tries to do it. Now, if this was the manga, we all know he'd probably be trying to get Shanks' attention, or they probably would have stayed with Shanks unless Shanks said, nah, I gotta go. That being a movie, especially one that's non-canon, and even though per a manga panel, Uta's status is canon, you can see why. Which goes to another thing, is like, why did they have to go out of the way to say this film was not canon? With something like this, if there's any film that probably could be, it would be this one. Now, maybe this is the fact that I'm not fully 100% cut off on every little detail in the manga we're at right now, and also everything before that, so maybe I'm missing some greater context here why this one shouldn't be canon. But the way it's presented, it comes off like just about most other manga / anime movies, to where they leave it ambiguous where it is, so where you could try to fit it in, but they say it's non-canon. So at least in the world of the anime, it's up to you whether you want to say the events here happened or not. Not counting a couple Dragon Ball movies later on where they are. Which the whole thing about the Dragon Ball movies and trying to fit them in, that could be a topic for another day, and probably will be. I just got to do notes on that first. That'd be a fun one. It's non-canon status. It is what it is. At least Uta herself is canon, at least based on that panel from the manga. Overall, One Piece Film Red is an entertaining film. If you are a fan of One Piece, whether you're caught up or not, definitely be a fun time. Probably get more out of it if you are caught up, at least semi-close to where the current part of the manga is. But even without, if you're like me and just enjoy the series, you'll definitely get a lot of enjoyment out of it, whether you watch the dub, or you watch the original, whether you watch it with just the subtitles on and no audio, which, since it's a musical, I don't know why you do that, but hey, to each their own. Definitely once it hits home video, which I'm looking to see if there's anything on Wikipedia about that. Nope. Once it does, though, I plan on picking it up. And then, of course, once I get the order that's supposed to come out, I'll start doing reviews of the other One Piece films that are on the Netflix. So I don't think all of them are on there, but a decent amount of them are. Like, I know the horror movie inspired one is supposed to be on there, so that should be fun. And that's really all I have to say about this film, so till next time, guys.
We can choose the way of our future, try a brand new path. We can change the world. We can change the world.